I Don't Give a Fet says, you've mentioned before that your Alcatraz escape was your favorite myth. Would you still say it's your favorite, and what was your favorite thing about it? First of all, what's my favorite myth is the question I get all the time, and it's beyond impossible to answer. But there are stories that I felt were so robustly done, and Alcatraz is one of these. So to recap, for those uninitiated, Alcatraz was built as the most impenetrable high-security prison in the world. And then a few years later, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, who were all in jail for different things, got together and collaborated and escaped from Alcatraz. They not only socially engineered the guard shifts so that the weak guards were working at night while they were working on. If you go to Alcatraz and you see where they built everything, it is even more amazing. Alcatraz is super tiny. But anyway, they escaped from Alcatraz in a boat made from latex rubber raincoats. And when we decided to do this, the FBI, of course, investigated this within an inch of its life. There is, I think, 1,500-page FBI report of the Alcatraz escape, and I read every page. Jamie and I went through all of the research. And then we got to go to the San Francisco Maritime Museum and look at the artifacts that they left, because there's still a bucket of stuff they built. And unfortunately, because it's latex and it was built many years ago, it's basically rotted into the shape that it's in the bucket. So you can't pull these things out and look at them. But based on what we understood, and frankly, while the FBI report is incredibly complete, I don't think that a genuine maker or engineer had sought to tackle that problem until we did. And we had, I think, a fundamentally different approach. And suffice to say, I think that the boat that they built was more than seaworthy and more than able to get them from Alcatraz to the North Shore. We were worried about cold. It turns out when you're in a boat, you're super hot. We were sweating. I was taking seawater in the arms of my pea coat to cool off because the paddling was so vigorous. We thought that inflation would be a problem, or air tightness. It turns out that our boat wasn't remotely airtight, but we were able to continually inflate it as we went sufficiently to make it to shore. It's because of those reasons, the historical record that existed, the fact that no builder had really looked at all of this material and tried to cohere it, the fact that there were still artifacts available that we could call upon, and the fact that Alcatraz not only gave us permission to crawl through the little holes they had made in the vent through their cells, but we launched off the North Shore of Alcatraz at the same time of night under the exact same weather conditions, and we made it to Horseshoe Bay in less than an hour. That's why that is one of my all-time favorites in terms of the rigor of its methodology. And believe me, if I had a reason to tackle it again, I totally would have. In the last season of Mythbusters, we were looking to maybe comb over some of our old favorites, but frankly, like, the methodology on that and most of our other stuff was really, like, worthy, I think. Clan Rainfire asks, at what point in the show's run did you and the other hosts, as well as the production crew, begin to realize the effect the show was having in terms of cultural impact, as well as encouraging people to get into STEAM, engineering, etc.? And did that inform the making of the show in any way? It was late. It was late before that started to become apparent. So Mythbusters shows up in 2003. The first 3D printer shows up, 2009? First filament printer, right? Yeah, there's stereolithography long before that, but the first filament printer shows up at 2009. Maker Faire starts in 5 or 6, something like that, 4 or 5. I view these all as part and parcel of what really pushed the maker movement. We're nowhere near responsible for it on Mythbusters, but we're commensurate with these other, I think, big aspects of it. Make Magazine. So it's not until really 2011 or so that we really start to see how that cultural impact lands. And that people have been watching the show long enough to come and say, hey, you got me through high school chemistry. I used to joke that the first things we heard on autograph lines were like, you got me through high school physics and chemistry. Then we heard, you got me through college physics. Then we heard, I became a physicist. Then we heard, I'm raising my kids on the show. Then I've now been hearing my adult children are doctors of engineering because of Mythbusters. So just watching this whole arc. As far as how it changed the production of the show, not at all, really. I mean, the main arc of what shifted for us was the ways in which we learned to tell more precise stories spectacularly. Among the things we learned how to do over the course of the show were things like gathering. Like I said, one of my producers, Y, was really excellent at wrangling lots of people. It's an incredibly difficult thing to wrangle 200 people and get them fed and have bathrooms for them for a whole day. And also leave them excited and happy about what they've just experienced. Once we were able to reasonably manage 200, 300 people on a set, it opened up all these other stories that we could do. So for us, mostly what we were paying attention to was we were getting bigger budgets, we're getting more time to make episodes, and so we were just dialing into tighter stories that we wanted to tell. But I mean, like I said, we started at the very beginning considering that every time we were on a shooting range, we were communicating to people something with just our manner. And we were like, you know what, on the shooting range, let's not be like, hey! That is a decision made on taking into account what your impact may be. I am grateful to say that I can't think of an occurrence in which a civilian trying something they saw us do on the show hurt themselves. And that was our nightmare from the very, very beginning. We were really clear that would be a terrible tragedy, and thus worked really hard to highlight all the really dangerous stuff. So, if anything, the fact that we were a hit and spent so long as a hit made us take that responsibility probably deeper, but it was already there. I'll finish with this last thing, which is that, when you're doing something like that, it's no good to try and think about how you can maintain your cultural import. This is something I end up getting into conversations with other content creators and makers and communicators. It's like some people are chasing the cultural import, and I always view that as a fool's errand, as total folly. You can just hope that your point of view and your area of interest intersects with the culture in a way that's relevant and allows you to actually tell your stories at a wider scale. But you can't chase cultural relevancy. I really don't think that you can. And so I wanted to finish with this quote from Rilke, the poet, where he says, "It is best to try your best to remain ignorant of your best qualities." So our joke on Mythbusters, and I think I said this at the beginning of this live stream, we tried to never think of the children. We were never considering the children when we were making our show. And I think that's what they responded to then and respond to now. We weren't talking down to anybody. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.